be back. Last week, I got interrupted by a power outage. That was kind of strange. Hasn't happened in a long time. So I've missed you guys, and I've not been able to come back before today, in spite of my desire to. I'm here now. So I also want to just start this out with a nice shout out to Brian Shannon of Alpha Trends and Nate Michaud of Investors Underground. They both retweeted our space today, which is very generous of them on X, and that I suspect will bring hopefully some new people to the space that haven't been here before. So for those perhaps who are going to join us that are new, I do these almost every Wednesday when I'm able to. I try to also do it on Tuesday or Thursday. It's usually around 7, 8 o'clock, 8:30 Eastern time. It varies based on my schedule. BTO, how are you? Hopefully you're doing well. Glad I'm here with you and all the traders. It's good to have you here, BTO. Sorry about last week. I had a lot of DMs last week, guys, from people like, what happened? Hi, Shane. Everybody's like, where'd you go? I couldn't even really get, I came on my phone, but unfortunately my phone was needing to have a charge. And I thought, oh, I could charge it after this, after the, live. But then I couldn't because the power was out. Happy Wednesday, Dale. Glad you're here too. So anyway, it was pretty hilarious. I have to say, we're so accustomed now, to things such as electricity that you're just like a lost sheep in the woods when it goes out. Anyway, it was daytime, so, it wasn't the end of the world. But I just felt bad. Hi, Tila. Good to have you here. I just felt bad because I had just put out so many social media posts about joining us. And then all those people probably like, what the hell happened to them? So yeah, power outages, they still happen today. I want to talk about a specific topic today. However, as usual, I'm going to ask you guys what you want coaching on. If there's any specific item that you want me to coach you on, please just bring it up. For anybody here who's new, usually I will coach based on the comments. If somebody's struggling with a particular issue, just put it in the comments. Obviously, the Cliff Note version, and then we'll try to take it on and coach you around it. But usually I come with a topic as well to talk about in case there are no specific questions. But we have some regulars here, Tina, Dale, Shane, and BTO. If you guys have any specific questions, please feel free to put them up now. But preparing the newsletter this morning for this week, Curtin call, and hopefully everybody who's here receives that. But if not, please go to thewallstreetcoach.com and sign up. Curtain call is my also almost weekly email that addresses issues that really, yes, specifically traders deal with, but people deal with. The way you guys show up as a trader has to do with how you show up as a person. And what I ultimately hope to do is have traders start to realize that if they have challenges or places where they feel stuck in their personal life, and that hasn't been addressed yet, you can't kid yourself that isn't going to follow itself over into your trading. And when those things show up in your trading, inevitably they're going to be potentially more costly, certainly with your mental capital, but definitely with your cash and your literal capital. So ultimately, I want you guys always coming from this headspace of, how do I deal with loss in my personal life? Because whatever it is that's showing up personally for you is going to feel even more loud in your trading. It's going to be even more more, what's the word I'm looking for? like more charge, right? There, we all have our triggers, but when it comes down to money and risk and our sense of livelihood, everything ramps up in intensity because we each are kind of wired that way, right? Just survival alone is going to be at stake every time you potentially, do well or don't do well. And so I want you guys to always just think, oh, here are the places I seem to be triggered in my personal life. How could that possibly show up then in my trading, where I think, oh, it's just a trading issue? No, it's probably informed by something that has nothing to do with trading, but trading is just pouring this bright, how do you pronounce that word? Key lick. It's like a Broadway light upon you. It's not like a regular flashlight. If you've ever been to a Broadway show, the lights there are so hot. Like you can see the actors sometimes by the end of the second set sweating because the lights can be so intense on them. So keep it in mind that trading is sort of a big, very bright spotlight on you and all the places you perhaps have some stuckness, perhaps have some old limiting beliefs, have perhaps some, insecurities. Hi, Jasmine. So glad you're here. Long time no see. I apologize to everybody for losing my power last week. I felt bad. So here's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about our sense of self-validation. And this is what Curtin call is going to be on this week. I started to write this morning. And in fact, I put out a tweet today, guys, about this very topic. So yes, we missed you too, Jasmine. I missed all of you. I lost power, so I couldn't be here. But I'm back, just like Arnold says. I'm back. So I just want you guys to think about how often you are potentially trading with the energy of trying to get validation about yourself. So this was the topic I was thinking about this morning. Yes, Tina says, I think this is way more common than most traders realize. So thank you, Tina, for sharing. Because it's really easy for us to collapse our sense of worthiness with our success in trading. You gotta think that like anybody who is struggling with feeling like they are worthy is going to ultimately seek out external validation. It's just human nature, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I want you to realize is that that sense of validation likely will never be able to really come from the markets. I wanted to say externally, but look, all of us hopefully are lucky enough to have one person who loves us. Some people aren't lucky enough. Some people don't ever find somebody to love them and to give them the experience of unconditional love. And if that's the case, well, then I'm very sorry to hear that, but I don't want you to feel alone because that happens. And sometimes it's seasons in our life where we are very isolated, seasons in our life where we are very much alone. But at the end of the day, the one thing you can control is your relationship with yourself, cultivating that relationship, because you are the only person, even if you find a partner, even if you find, your parents, like your siblings, like the only person that's going to be with you at the birth of your life and the death of your life is you. So I want you to think about what is the relationship you have with yourself, because if that is compromised in a small way or in a lot of ways, it likely is driving you unconsciously, especially when you trade. It's likely why sometimes when you see that you took a wrong move, you don't get out of that wrong move. Why? Because being right, you have to be right. Why do you have to be right though? Think about that. Have you ever stopped and just paused and thought, what is up with the difficulty I have with being wrong? What is up with me collapsing my sense of self-worth, my sense of feeling good about myself with whether I was right or not? I want you guys to really just think about that for a minute. Like, how is that possible? How is it, whether you're right or wrong, so important to you? I'm not making that wrong. I'm just wanting you to look under the hood of that because it's such a common issue, right? BTO says, I don't even think I have a relationship with myself. If I do, it is to criticize myself when I can't accomplish something. BTO, I think you will not be alone in that. I think a lot of people and a lot of traders don't even pay attention to the relationship they have with themselves. And so I invite you, BTO, and anybody else here, if you feel the same way, you guys can start today. This conversation is the beginning of you cultivating the relationship you have with yourself. Think about it. It's so easy if we don't have anybody kind of ever emulate this quality to us to not consciously really self-reflect. There's an assessment you guys have probably heard me talk about, and one of the most fascinating parts of that assessment is a score that people get around their relationship to themselves. And there's 3 ways that shows up. Eric, I agree. The somatic breath work really can help because the somatic breath work is, in a sense, forcing you, a gentle forcing you to reconcile and connect with the body that you are. Part of the reason I think it's really not something most people think about, this relationship with the self, is because a lot of people have disconnected themselves from the relationship to their body. And that is part of why I think it's so hard for us to realize, oh, there is a sense of I am inside of me that maybe I'm not really connecting to. Thomas says, I admit I am tied up in many respects with my investing or my speculation. Thomas, good for you for admitting that. It is, of course, most people, the case for most people. So anybody who identifies with this, I don't want you guys to be hard on yourself about it, but I want you to be curious about it. I want you to start to ask yourself, what is that about? Like, there is something to do with your sense of identity and the outcomes. So what that tells you is that there is a part of you who suspects that your sense of worthiness is only going to be valid. You're only going to be worthy if you take winning trades, if you do X, Y, or Z. And what I want you guys to just for a minute contemplate is that you can't earn your worthiness. You can't earn you being somebody who's worthy of love and belonging. It's a birthright. So think about that for a second. What if that's true? What if you don't have to earn your worthiness? Now, if we're talking about trading, you do have to earn the right to trade, right? You have to earn the wisdom that you have to acquire. You have to earn the screen time to be able to recognize patterns, right? That pattern recognition. There's a whole bunch of earning your ability to be an excellent trader. But that is a very different conversation than the conversation of your intrinsic value, your intrinsic worthiness. That is not something anybody has to earn. And what happens is if that doesn't get healed over here, who could blame you for taking that lack of feeling worthy into anything you do that has expression in the external? You're going to look to external events to make you feel like oh, I am worthy because I had a winning trade. No, you are worthy of maybe trading. You are worthy of being a trader that improves, but your fundamental worthiness is not dependent upon that. So that's ultimately the question I want you guys, or the inquiry, right? What do I keep saying? All of these life coachings. This is about inquiry. I want you all to come to these conversations as though you're a scientist. One of the things that's so amazing about the art of science is that these scientists have to commit to being curious, to not have judgment. As you guys do this with me, as you reflect upon yourself, I don't want you to have judgment. I want you to be fascinated with what you discover about yourself, because that potentially opens up the door to transforming it. But if you come in with judgment, if you come in with making yourself wrong, you're going to get defensive. You're going to put your arms across your chest. You're going to start to beat yourself up, and that ain't going to give you the access to making change. So you guys have to let go of the right and the wrong so that you can go down the path you want to go, which is to observe yourself and see, are you being constantly informed by this belief that you have to earn your value? And you have to earn your value as a trader, a competent trader, but that is very different than earning your value as a human being. All right, let's see what we got here. Eric says, focus on one area of trading, one strategy, and be one with yourself. True multitasking doesn't really exist. I would agree. Multitasking is not all that we think we could do. We all think we're capable of it, but none of us really are. BTO says, this is so deep. You're a trader worthy of improvement. That I like a lot. Eric says, learn to earn and yearn to learn. I like that phrase, Eric. That's awesome. All right, so let's just think about this. This is the question that I want you guys to like consider and kind of like, chew on like a dog with a bone, right? I want you to think about how come it's so hard to be wrong in a trade, right? How come you get so much fear that you're potentially missing out, right? All of these are the standard challenges traders struggle with. I want you guys to start to think to yourself, how come I struggle with FOMO? How come I don't like to be wrong? These are the places that you begin to see where your sense of worthiness, your sense of self-esteem, your sense of confidence are all collapsed with what you achieve, with what you do, with what you make, with what watch you wear, with what car you drive, what girl or guy you date, what college you went to, what your house looks like, what your neighbor thinks about your garden or lawn versus theirs. All of these are external places that we have a tendency to measure our sense of worthiness next to. And you can imagine how we're set up to never feel good, especially in today's world where we're constantly being exposed to social media with the perfect, guy with the perfect body, with the perfect trades, with the perfect car, with the perfect travel, with the perfect everything. Regardless of whether it's true or not, it's easy to compare yourself. Why? Because you feel like, yes, he is worthy, but I am not. That is kind of that invisible story that all of us are constantly up against. BTO says, my answer to that is because I expect to be right. But expecting to be right, BTO, I want you to get underneath that a little bit. You might want to get to a place where, based on your studies and your experience and your pattern recognition, you hope that you're right. But I don't think I would ever want any trader to expect to be right, because when we expect, there's a presumption. And if you're presuming and in the land of expecting, then that means you don't potentially have any room for that sense of humility. I know you guys know this, but I think it bears repeating. You can have everything right on a trade. You could have your setup, you could this, and this, and yet luck can go against you and you still lose. So if that can happen, then you have to always go into a trade prepared that it isn't actually correct, so that you have a straight off plan of how to get yourself out. If you expect yourself to be right, then you have no preparation for what happens if it's just bad luck that day. Even if you got all the boxes checked, you could still just have bad luck. Something unexpected could happen, and you need to be prepared for that. What I think you want to get also curious about is what's going on that concept of expecting to be right is the default setting for you. I would get curious about that. Eric says, struggle with FOMO when selling before the breakout. 1 minute too early. Hard to get over being so close. Eric, I'm with you. I would agree with you that that is hard to be with. And I want you to get really, deep over what is the internal dialogue, because it didn't go the way you hoped it would. Because you were that minute early, what was that self-talk? Because you are going to be potentially 1 minute early often. And what happens is you learn from that to not be early the next time. So the key is starting to really look at what that self-talk is when things don't go the way you thought they would. Because in that self-talk, it's revealing to you what the relationship you have with yourself is. All right, let's see here. I just have to shrink the screen to get to some of these comments. I'm so glad we have so many comments here. All right, so let me see here. All right, so Eric says, don't have expectations so you won't be disappointed. Yep, I totally got that. BTO, you're welcome. Risk. Prepare to lose. Good trading is about being a good loser. Absolutely. But to be a good loser, guys, you're going to have to be able to separate your sense of worthiness with loss. That's why I really feel it's so hard for you guys to lose. It's hard for you to lose because if you equate loss with being unworthy, that's really hard to be with. Who wants to be with that feeling? So what you guys are avoiding isn't really loss as much as it's avoiding the feeling of shame and not being worthy. That's what your guys really are avoiding. And that's why I want you to reprogram this internal hood, the engine of you, this vehicle that you guys are, because what's informing these FOMO trades and revenge trades and, not being able to get out of a trade and not being able, you have to be right and you can't be wrong. All of that has to do with your relationship to yourself, not allowing yourself to be human, not allowing yourself to still not perhaps understand a pattern, all of this. Brian David Rutt says, this is great. Thank you. Really bubbled up some items to the surface for me on this topic that I'm just now realizing was a deep-rooted problem in my trading. Excellent, Ryan. Good on you for being able to so quickly apply this concept to your trading. That tells me, Brian, that you have a good relationship with yourself, that you're able to start to see that. This is what happens, guys. If we don't have this good relationship with ourselves, or as good as perhaps now you guys are thinking maybe you want it to be, I want you to realize your ability to self-improve is hindered because you're going to always be on the defense. If you take everything personal, if you are always coming from this place of thinking you have to protect your ego from feeling like shit, you're not going to be able to learn. You're not going to be able to learn from your own mistakes. Why? Because you're so busy whipping yourself for the errors you make. Like, whipping yourself from mistakes doesn't do any good whatsoever. Plus, it just compromises your ability to actually learn, to actually open up and figure out what was going on with that trade that you made a mistake in. But every time you equate it with your value, you have no shot in hell at being able to have takeaways from the mistakes you make. That's why this is so important. Casey, so glad you're here. And Ryan, I'm glad you're here too. It's so good to see some new names here in the chat box. So glad you guys are here. Casey says, one change I've made over my 30 years of trading was to not share my trades, good or bad, without anyone except my accountant. It takes the pressure off if people are asking, how did you do today? Look, Casey, I totally get that. And if I may be so bold, if that works for you, stick with it. But again, like, who cares what people think of you, right? And this is a big thing too, guys. It's really easy when we don't have that confidence in ourselves to be impacted by how other people see us. But I think I've referenced to you guys before, one of my favorite scenes in any movie was in a movie called The Fountainhead. And this is with Howard Rock, the architect, who's basically been kind of blackballed out of the architecture industry because he won't compromise on his design. And this guy, this newspaper critic, architect critic who has a huge following, really goes out of his way to ruin Rourke's reputation and to steal any opportunity he may have to build a building. And he sees him at this construction site one night, the building that Rourke was supposed to get commissioned, but lost it because he wouldn't compromise. And Dewey looks at Rourke and he says to him, oh, I've always wondered, I've tried to ruin your career. I've always wondered what you think of me. And there's this great, amazing moment where Rourke doesn't even skip a beat and he just looks at this guy and he's like, I don't think of you. It's the most powerful scene, guys, you've ever seen, because Rourke really doesn't think of him. This man thinks, oh, Rourke must hate me. He must be after me. He doesn't even think of him because he knows who he is. And that's ultimately what I want you guys to come to. I want you guys to know who you are, and who you are transcends your trading, transcends what school you went to, transcends anything and everything you might ever achieve. Who you are can never, ever, ever be unworthy of what is ultimately each of us are always going to be desiring, is love and belonging. You can't do anything to not be worthy of that because you're a human being. So, all right, let me keep reading the comments here because we got a lot. I'm sorry, I got like on a soapbox there. Jasmine's giving some encouragement to Eric. Jasmine, thanks for doing that. Yes, all about awareness, Eric. Thomas says, note, I am probably the oldest participant here, and I'm the oldest participant here, Thomas. And I'm quite sure I'm trying to make up for underachievement and being heroic. Good for you, Thomas, for seeing that, because that is such a key that opens up a doorway for you if you can start to see that. That whole concept of underachievement, let me tell you, that is not a 21st century made up concept. I don't know what is. Anybody who is measuring themselves up against this overachievement, toxic culture we have, you guys, stop it. That's what I want you to do. Just stop it. And that has to go in deeper than me just saying it. But I'm telling you right now, it's a bunch of bullshit. It's what the colleges put forward in their advertising so that we go and spend $100,000 on their education. All right, guys, see, I hope I'm saying your name right. The way I see it, as long as you do your job as a trader, pick the right setup, position size, entries, exits, even if the trade goes against you, you did everything right. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, that is an excellent statement, and I'm 100% with you. You can't control the market. I'm with you. But I think what happens is that sometimes we start to equate our worthiness with those trades going the way that you want it to. And like you just said, there's plenty of times when the trades aren't going to do what you want them to do. All right. Eric says, heard something the other day that insecurity is underlying shame and guilt driving behavior. Yes, I think I would say even more. It's not it is insecurity, but what that ultimately is our sense of not being worthy, our sense of not being enough. Insecurity comes because we don't feel like we're enough, because we don't feel we're worthy as we are, that we have to lose 20 pounds or gain 20 pounds. We have to, have this body type or have this kind of bank account or this kind of Instagram following or fill in the blank. And until we achieve those things, then maybe we'll be worthy. But the thing is, you find out even when you do achieve all those things, that the inside doesn't change until you work on the inside. The external things never, ever, ever make that internal really shift. All right. Eric says, truly enlightened people don't really care what others think. Eric, I want to say, I think if even those people that I would say I consider enlightened, I think that it's human nature to get caught up in what other people think. But I think the key, if we're on this plane, I think we probably have some work to do, right? No matter who they are, all the teachers out there, like Eckhart Tolle, like if we're above 6 feet, like we probably are here because we got something more to learn. And so I would say the key is that ultimately it's about your relationship to yourself that I don't even think it's enlightenment is necessary. I think it's simply developing a deep relationship with yourself, and that in turn facilitates dropping and not worrying as much or caring what other people think. BTO says, I love the movie you recommend about the hero's journey. We'll rewatch. Excellent. Great idea. Well, Kim, pretty sure I'm a little bit older than you. Okay, Tito, we can arm wrestle. Who's older? So the movie the PTO is mentioning is a great movie called, I'm going to put that in the, let's see here if I can do that. I'm trying to get into the box. It's called Finding Joe the movie.com, and that is a movie that came out quite a few years ago. You can go right to that website, guys. You can pay, I think it's $5 to rent, maybe $10 to buy, something like that. That movie is actually documentary, and it's all about the hero that is inside of you, that you are the hero of your own journey. You are the hero of your own story. And part of that heroic journey, it is something that I learned from Joseph Campbell. He's the creator, he's the author of a lot of books. One of those books is called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And that was the book that George Lucas read and was inspired to write Star Wars from. What Joe Campbell did, he was a mythologist who couldn't get a job during the Depression, so he spent his time reading about all of world's religions, Indian, Native American stories, Asian fairy tales. Like he just kept studying all the world's religions, fairy tales, myths. And what he began to see was that the pattern was the same in every single one of them, that there was this hero, that there's a call to adventure. There's the hero's refusing of the call. Ooh, I don't want to do that. And then the hero finally takes the call and moves forward. If you look at from Harry Potter to Neo to Star Wars to, what is that old book, the Greek book? I can't think of the Iliad. Like all of these stories, Muhammad, Jesus, Buddha, every single world religion, every single story fairy tale, mythology, they all follow the exact same pattern, which Campbell identifies as the mono myth or the hero's journey. Siddhartha, exactly. All of these are simply the hero's journey story. And the key, what Campbell says over and over again, I'm just looking here to see if I have the hero's map handy, because I would just lift it up and show it to you guys. Let me just see here if I have it, because I usually have it close by. And this, guys, is one of my practices. You guys know I have, my book, Transforming Wall Street. And in that book, I talk at length about, I do have it here. Okay, great. All right, I'm going to hold this up for you guys. So in my book, Transforming Wall Street, I have 5 practices. This hero's journey is practice 4. So I'm going to just hold this up. If anybody wants this, just send me a DM. I'll get it over to you. Oh, shoot. It's backwards, right? Yeah, it is backwards. So let me just see if there's a way that I wonder if I can reverse my screen so that it won't be backwards. Let me just look at this screen for a second and see if I can reverse it. I don't know that I see that as an option. Do I? Let's see. No. Okay. So anyway, here, I'll just walk you guys through it because, all right. So you get the gist, right? So it's backwards, but you guys can see that it's a circle. So ultimately what happens, it goes left to right, right? So this is the separation and departure. This is where you get the call of adventure. And I would say for all of you guys, the call of adventure is when you first started to hear about trading, when you first started to hear about investing. I'm going to have Kyle Williams on X Space next Tuesday. And if you listen to his conversations with Anthony Nito, just did an interview with him on Investors Underground, and he talks about how old he was when he first kind of learned about trading, right? That is when the hero first gets the hints. So I want you guys to think back. When did you first think about trading? When did somebody first talk about it? When did you start to think, that might be for me? That's the beginning of your hero's adventure. And what happens along the way of a hero's adventure? I'll tell you, you're going to find yourself at some point finding a mentor, finding supernatural aid of some sort, right? You think back to Luke Skywalker, what happens to him, right? He has a great loss, right? And then he finds his teachers, his mentors. Then there's going to be this like crossing of the first threshold. They call it the belly of the whale. Jonah in the whale's belly, right? He's in the middle of a crisis, right? We see Luke has a crisis when his whole family, his aunt and uncle are killed by the, Death Stars, whatever. And that's when he's like all alone and he has to like start making some changes. So the reason I love this, guys, is because I feel like you can start to imagine, where are you on your hero's adventure? Now, look, we can live this adventure multiple times in a lifetime. Sometimes we could go through the whole cycle in a freaking day. But the key is, if you have the map, then you can kind of know what happens, right? So I'm going to go through the rest of it. So there's separation and departure. Then this other quarter is the descent. That is loss after loss after loss, feeling like shit all the time, seeing all these other people around you who you thought started after you and they're doing better than you, feeling bad about yourself. Maybe your significant other is arguing with you being a trader, right? You're going to go through a descent of sorts. And then comes the initiation period. That means you're going to have to transcend your ego. You're going to learn some tools. That could be you finally having the biggest loss of your career and needing to keep trading afterwards. And then, of course, there's the road back. That's the return. That's when you become somebody who's able to transcend your loss and able to step back into this concept of You've got the wisdom now. You're going to return this with the wisdom that you've learned on this painful, harrowing journey. And then you're going to take that wisdom and possibly share it with others. So there's more details, but that's the gist of it. And I'm going to pause there to see if anybody has any questions. But why do I want you guys to look at your trading journey from this standpoint? Because it allows you to see that the pain you're going through is not pain that is new. This is required. This is the price of admission. You are going to have to, in a sense, the crucifixion, right? In the Christ story, that crucifixion is necessary for him to be resurrected. Everybody has to die in a sense. And I don't mean literal. I mean your ego has to die. There's part of you that no longer serves you. That has to die. The old you has to die. Just like the butterfly, right? You've got a caterpillar, and that caterpillar is going to transmute into the butterfly. But there's darkness in that cocoon. It's seemingly like the caterpillar is dead, but he hasn't died, but he has, in a sense. And then all of him turns into the butterfly. So if you guys want to become the butterflies of your trading, there's something that's going to have to die. There's something you're going to have to let go of. There's something you're going to have to let your ego burn and let go for you to move on to the next level. And this happens with everybody, even sophisticated traders. They're going to get to a point where they're going to have to up level, and they're going to have to let go of things that previously served them. All right, so BTO says, you helped me with that movie at a very low point in my life since I've been following you since Steady Trade Podcast. Thank you, BTO. I'm glad you've been watching me that long. That's a long time, dude. But I'm very glad that movie served you. I think it's so powerful. I really hope everybody here watches it. And if you like that movie and you want more, then I recommend you watch The Power of Myth, which is an interview with Joe Campbell. Bill Moyers does. It was filmed 30 years ago. It's 6 hours long. You can watch an hour at a time, but I'll tell you, if you think Finding Joe, the movie is good, wait till you see the actual guy himself talking about the stories. I listened to that when I was in my late teens. My sister and I got the cassette tapes, and we used to listen to it at bedtime every single night, over and over again. Those 6 hours, we just kept listening and listening and listening. He's the best storyteller you will ever hear. Ahab, Eric, are you saying Ahab from Moby Dick? That's that. I think you're saying something else. Watch out, everyone. Don't become overconfident. The whale becomes a shark. I'm not sure I get that, Eric, but you can explain. All right. And then was temptation on that? Yes, Shane. Are you asking me, is temptation on the hero's journey map? Hell yeah, it is. Ego death. Exactly. So yeah, temptation right here in the descent. What happens? There's the temptress, right? If you think about all the stories, all the good stories have the same template, right? There's always like a temptress like that puts it on the woman, that it's always a temptress, but it's also, there's tempter. There's going to be trades that are going to tempt you, right? If you think to all the times when you hear the stories of the really big traders, and when they blow up, they can pinpoint when they were tempted, what they were tempted with, what was motivating them. Like, that is a huge part of trading, resisting temptation. But think about it. What is that temptation about? That temptation is, I'm going to be bigger. I'm going to have more money. I talked about that Mara trade that I took a while ago, right? And it was like returning 20%. And I'm still learning with this guy, Bryce, who's at Steady Trade, who was teaching me. And he's like, what do you want to do, Kim? And I was tempted. I could feel the green-eyed monster. I want more money. And I was like, holy shit, there it is. I got to get out because I am being so tempted right now. Temptation is part of the journey. Resisting temptation is your discipline, is you becoming the hero, right? All the times we see hubris in our heroes, what happens? They get cut down because the hubris isn't appropriate, proper confidence. It's something else. All right. Yep, Moby Dick. Yep, I had a feeling once I saw Ahab, Eric, I was like, that's a Moby Dick he's talking about. An incredible story about hubris, about ego. Oh my God, about death, about life. Oh my God, there's so much in Moby Dick. That is a classic for all time. Okay, Shane, I just wanted you to elaborate on the temptation. Look, that temptation, that's part of why I think having this map is so helpful, guys, because at that place on your journey, if you know temptation's coming, like I'll liken it to the story of a newlywed couple, right? Let's just say a couple is happily married and they're like a year into their marriage. It's likely there's going to be temptation for both sides, right? Happening separate at the office, maybe with a new collection of friends. Like temptation is going to come to test you, and you want to be prepared for it. So you're not so surprised. So you're not taken unaware. You want to be present to it. All right. BTO says, yes, I remember you talking about that trade. Like if it was yesterday. Thank you, Kim. I'm so glad. But it was so good because it was so good for me to see how easy, but that was a whole physiological thing. And that's what you guys got to realize, when we get tempted, and they say, oh, the devil's on one shoulder, the angel's on the other story. Like, the devil isn't going to put a piece of liver in front of you guys. Like, it's going to put a piece of filet mignon. It's not going to put like some ugly girl that you're not at all attracted to if you're happily married. It's going to put like freaking Giselle or Ashley Graham in front of you if that's your type. Like, temptation's going to come in the perfect package. It's going to be the trade. Look at all the return on investment I get with this trade. Look, I'll actually meet that number, that made-up number I have for myself. Like, you guys got to realize that temptation is going to bring all of the things that you've been secretly wanting anyway. And that's why you have to be prepared for it. Mara has been running again. I know. I saw that, Eric. I saw that, Andrew. I get Andrew and sees his emails, and he was talking about Mara the other day, and I was laughing. I was like, not Mara. Thank God I'm not in that trade. All right. I don't see any questions. If you guys have any questions, let me know. And also keep in mind, I'm going to be launching my 6-week small group coaching. We're going to start January 5th. So if you guys want to be in that small group of traders, please send me a DM and I'll give you more information about it. We just closed up our first 6-week small group coaching, and it was amazing. And I say that because of the participants. They were just so 100% in. They did all the homework. They played full out. They played full on. They were fearless, like true heroes going forth. And it was an incredible, incredible ride. I enjoyed myself with them so much. So I hope you guys will consider it because this just gives you a little taster of what's to come. All right. So if you want to hear, and so what I did do, by the way, with that Trading Heroes Journey, I outlined what happens to heroes, and I've identified what I feel happens to traders. So I break down, I know it's hard for you guys to see, but I take each one that Joe Campbell identified, and I identify what happens to traders in blue underneath it, so you guys can self-identify. All right, BTO Kim, how can we begin or start to rebuild that relationship with ourselves? So great. And Fearless Girl next to the New York Bull. Yes, Eric, that's great. I have a picture of myself next to the Fearless Girl because I was in New York City back in August, so I have to get that picture up. I haven't had a chance to get those pictures put together. My good friend and like the best photographer in New York City, her name is Jill Lotenberg. Shout out to Jill. She's been my photographer for the past like 17 years, and she did the first pictures I ever got done on Wall Street, and she did these pictures. When I was there too, I did a talk for Bare Bulls Traders, and Mike Milani of Mundium Capital is one who got us all into the stock exchange for a back tour. So it's really fantastic. Joe Dispenza is a great guy to listen to. Okay, BTO. So I would say start by looking at how you would describe the relationship with yourself right now, right? What does that look like? And this is part of why I always recommend you guys consider taming your gremlin, because what I discovered along the way is that a lot of the relationship that people think they have with themselves is actually not with themselves, but with their gremlins. So what happens is a lot of people think that this voice that's really hard on them is their voice. But it isn't. It is usually that gremlin. Whenever that internal voice makes you feel shitty about yourself, it is not you talking to you. It is your inner gremlin. So my recommendation is Taming Your Gremlin. Get that book. Why? Because I want you to be able to clearly identify what that gremlin is so that you don't get mixed up with that being who you had the relationship with. Once you do that, once you start to identify the catchphrases the gremlin says to you all the time, the mean qualities that gremlin has, the judgments that gremlin has, what happens then is you begin to get out from under that barrage of talk. And for the first time, you can start to hear your own voice, because your own voice is usually kind of covered over by this gremlin. And the key is to get free of that. It's not like the gremlins ever go away, but at least you don't feel like you're held hostage by them anymore. And why is that so important? Because you have to have a relationship with you. And for you to do that, you have to lift off the mask, right? The mask of the gremlin, because the gremlin is kind of parading around with a mask on, pretending it's you, but it's not you. And that has to happen first. So that is where I would say to start. Dale says, yes, Taming Your Gremlin is a great book, really made me be aware. Excellent. I'm so happy to hear that, Dale. Eric says, or watch the movie again. Reason Gizmo is so tame. It's funny because Rick Carson wrote this book 30 years ago, before the Gremlins movie came out. His gremlins are very different than the movie. So I would say I'm not so sure that the movie is a replacement for the book, to be honest. But that's my opinion. But here's the thing. Once you start to get your gremlin identified, once you start to differentiate, right, between your voice, your self-talk, and the gremlin, which again, often is collapsed for most people if you haven't done this work, then you are in a position to cultivate this relationship you have with yourself. And that begins with you paying close attention to your values, right? I started to talk about this before with that assessment I have. And just because, I have to remember that I do have a business. I always get so caught up in this that I forget to talk about anything that I offer as a business person. So here's the link to this assessment, guys. I call it the Trader Positioning Index. So let me just put it here if you guys want to check it out. Besides this being like an X-ray of your soul, what it also will do is it'll indicate to us. So here are the 3 things that somebody could have with regard to the relationship they have with themselves. The first thing is that the least favorable of the 3 things that could show up there with regards to your relationship to yourself, the least favorable is when it says abstraction. And when a person has the relationship to themselves identified as abstraction, well, what does that mean? It means abstract. It means there isn't this full sense of definitiveness between that person and their sense of self. And that concept of abstraction is an indicator that you have to cultivate this relationship with yourself, that it isn't really developed yet. It's not anything that's wrong with that, but it begins to mirror and reflect back to you that there's work to be done. And that probably begins with separating your internal voice with your gremlins so that you can begin to hear yourself. The next level is roles. What does that mean? If a person self-identifies as roles, it means they are attached to the roles, the titles they have, right? Here's a couple: manager, trader, father, brother, friend, helper, adventurer, motorcyclist, political party, football or baseball team, right? That's a person who sees themselves as the roles they play. And as will come as no surprise to most of you, if you listen to me for more than a minute, we are not just our roles, right? They are some of what we are, but they are not all of who we are. We are so much more than just the roles we potentially are in our life. What is the highest form of self-identification on the Trader Positioning Index? It is unique. A person who sees themselves as unique. That means they know they're more than the roles they play. They know themselves a little bit. They've done some reflection. They've spent some time getting to know themselves. That is ultimately what I want to see almost all of you guys going for. I want you all to move in the direction of having a relationship with yourself, seeing yourself as completely unique. There is not another person on this planet specifically like you who comes from where you come from. I don't even remember what that stat is, but they say it all the time. Like the concept of you even being here, the likelihood of you even living and being on this planet and being born, like when you look at the stats, they're just staggering. Like the fact that, you even got fertilized in your mother's womb. It's like the chances of all of us being here are like just crazy stats to zero, like to one, like we even get to be here. And I want you guys to really think about, like, okay, if you are that incredibly lucky, blessed, call it what you will, then perhaps there is a reason you're here, even if it's for you to just come to terms with yourself and the relationship you have with yourself. Like, see that and yourself is incredibly unique and also incredibly worthy of the ultimate love and belonging. Eric says here, Les Miserables, is it Les Miserables? You're saying Who Am I song just came up for me. Started humming it. That's so funny. Les Miserables, such an incredible story. Guys, I read that book when I was quite young, actually, and it was riveting. I could not put that down. Yes, there's some old English in it, but wow, that book packs a wallop. Like, not that I didn't like the movie, not that I didn't see the Broadway show. I did many, many, many years later, but nothing could ever take the place of the reading of that book. That book is so, so profound. And that's it. That sense of I am. That is what I really hope that each of you will consider after today's conversation, right? If you are the hero of your own journey, then you want to have a relationship with yourself. You want to develop that. You want to start to get curious about what that relationship to yourself is. And you just start with where you are. You just start to notice what triggers you, what you like, what you don't like. I've also mentioned this before many times, is one of the great movies about somebody who is trying to get to know themselves is The Runaway Bride. Julia Roberts keeps running away from a marriage at the last minute that she's about to have with the guy. And what winds up being revealed, it's a rom-com, it's corny, all of that, but there's really profound wisdom in that movie. Because at one point, Richard Gere is the reporter that's covering the story. And of course, they start to fall for each other. But what he notices is that as he's covering the story and he starts to talk to all the previous, what are they called? Not financiers, fiancés. I was like mixing those two words up in my head. He started interviewing all the fiancés that she had, and he asked each of them what were her favorite eggs, and each guy reports that her favorite egg breakfast was the same one as his. And so what he realizes is that she didn't really know herself, right? Every guy she was with, she sort of just became what he wanted her to be. She just like, oh, you like a white omelet with veggies? I like white omelets with veggies. Like, she didn't really have a sense of her own identity. And what you see in the movie is this, there's this kind of, coming to Jesus moment where she's seeing all this. And there's a scene in her kitchen where she makes all the egg dishes, right? All the egg dishes all her past fiancés liked. Because she doesn't even know what kind of eggs she likes. So she makes them all. And then she goes one by one to taste them to see, what do I like? How do I like my eggs prepared? Now, that's a silly metaphor for a very serious thing. What kind of eggs do you guys like? Like, what are the people that you like? What are the movies or the values that matter to you? Like, that concept of the kind of eggs you like is something to do with the relationship we have with ourselves. And infrequently do a lot of us spend time contemplating that. So yeah, chameleon syndrome. I like that term. All right, BTO says you also helped me out by referring me to the Mankind Project. Did you go to the Mankind Project? Did you do the new warrior training, BTO? I will be so happy if you did. I'm just happy that you found it of service. But if you're willing to share, please share. A Mankind Project is for men only, guys. But there's another one for women called Mom Jean School of the Womanly Arts. But the Mankind Project is specifically, they have an intensive weekend called the New Warrior Training. And if any men are listening to this, that sounds appealing to, go to mkp.com, mankindproject.com. It's an intensive weekend that will till the soil on you and your relationship to yourself. And sometimes, not frequently, but when somebody comes into coaching, there are times when I'm like, actually, you want to go do the Mankind Project before you start the coaching, because it's going to pull up a whole bunch of stuff in a 3.5-day intensive, like nobody's business. The other course that I recommend too, which is men and women, is called Landmark Forum. All right, PTO says, I believe it's an experience like no other in which they help me with creating a better relationship with my wife and my children. Good job, BTO. Did you do the New Warrior training with them, or did you just do the courses online? I'm just curious, but I'm so happy that it did that for you. That's okay. We all need to do work on ourselves. Like, guy, if we're above ground, we need to do some work on ourselves. So we're hitting an hour, and I actually have another point in after this, so I'm going to have to close this up. But this was amazing. You guys always have the best comments, the best kind of input. Get to the New Warrior Training, BTO. If you haven't done that, gift that to yourself. It's not that expensive, guys. That's the best part. Landmark Forum and also Mankind Project. Those both are not that expensive. They're really reasonable. Mama G School of Womenly Arts, I think she has some online courses now that are probably more affordable, but her in-person was very expensive. Let me tell you, girls, that was very expensive. I invested in it, and I would have paid 100 times beyond that, but it was expensive. Okay, you're welcome, Shane. You're welcome. So much thanks for being here, Shane. I'm really glad you are. And everybody, I'm so glad everybody was here. Thank you, Eric, BTO, Jasmine, Tina. We just had so many new people here today too, guys. Dale, it's always good to have you here. And who else was here that was new today? I'm trying to remember your name. Guy, I want to say Gayazi. I think that's it. Tell me if I'm pronouncing that incorrect. Thomas, we had Thomas, of course, and KC. We had KC. We haven't had you before, I don't think, KC, and Ryan, David, Ron. It was just such a great group today, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thomas, of course, Dale. Just so many good faces. Good to see you guys all again and again. You guys rock. It was so good to do this again. I missed this last week. So I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pull this. Ooh, mahalo, SN. Good for you. I like you using the Hawaiian flower and the Hawaiian language. I'm not sure if I can do this tomorrow. If I can, I'll let you guys know. But at a minimum, I will see you next Wednesday, if not sooner. Take a look to see if the Trader Positioning Index is for you. If you're interested in the small group coaching, which is going to start in January, please send me a DM and I'll give you more information about it. If you can for yourselves, guys, I would say, especially if you're informed or inspired by this Hero's Journey model, send me the email and I will get you guys the Hero's Journey map so you guys can look at where you are on your own journey and watch Finding Joe the movie and consider The Power of Myth, which is on Amazon for free if you have Amazon Prime, and it is just mind-boggling good. I think you guys will love it. Eric, you rock too. Thank you so much for being here. I love you guys. You're awesome. You're just incredible to work with, and I always have such a good time here. So thank you for being here and supporting this space and one another. You guys are always so encouraging to each other, and that is a beautiful thing to witness. So thank you for being such good souls. Now go and develop that relationship with yourself. Get rid of those gremlins. Do the work on noticing what those gremlins are and start to cultivate the most important relationship you'll ever have, and that is the one with you. I can't wait to hear how it goes.